we'll be on YouTube and Facebook and maybe even Instagram. Hey, everybody. Let's see. Check. 1, 2. Can you hear me? Give me Giselle. What's up? Let me know if you can hear me. And hopefully my audio is good. How do I sound, Bear? Sound okay?
Yeah, you sound good. How about me?
Yeah, you sound good. Okay, guys. Yeah, we got 5 viewers in here is all. Come on, people. Okay, I know it's not our normal streaming time, so we're gonna fire this up. We're Dr. Lando and I are here today. We're going to get into agrarianism, the philosophy of it, why we need it more than ever, and get into the health benefits of it and all that. It's gonna be a fun show. Let's do it. I'm gonna hit record and we're gonna fire up the podcast. Okay, and we're back for another episode of Alfacast. My name's Mike Winner, and I'm here as always with Dr. Barre Lando up here on the Smith River in the great state of Jefferson. It is 2021, and this is really the first official podcast of the new season. And today's topic is something really close to our hearts, agrarianism and the importance of it now more than ever. We're going to dive deep into it as we are in uncharted, crazy times, huh, Bear? Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
what can you say?
Everything's a show out in Babylon. So this is going to be a fun one to talk about because this is really grounding and something that really is an answer to a lot of the world's problems. And a reason why I moved my family out of Los Angeles, and just something that, yeah, it's going to be a fun shot. So let's just jump into it. This week's Alfacast kicks off the 2021 podcast year with the first in an A to Z series on farming and gardening. We'll focus on 2 articles co-authored by Deborah and Dr. Barre Lando, both certified Master Gardener-Permaculturists and overseers of our own Alfa Vedic Gardens permaculture farm. Did you know that agrarianism is both a philosophical and social philosophy that has been the foundation of all great and enduring civilizations? On this episode, we'll make a strong case that it's time to return to our roots and how agrarianism is the best possible method to restore our freedoms and personal health. We already have had many spectacular guests lined up for the new Alfacast season, but we've also heard your many requests to have more in-house episodes as we have much to share. And we've had many requests on the specific topic of gardening, farming, growing, permaculture, soil science, which we'll delve more and more into this year with special guests and with Dr. Lando. Today, we felt like really to start with the foundation of the philosophy and why it's so important to really understand that energetically and in from the higher realms, and why this is something that can really, it's not something just the past, right? This is something that is really agrarianism is something that is foundational for life in humanity on this realm forever. Dr. Lando, how are you today?
Hey, I'm doing great, Mike, and glad you got out and got a little powdery yesterday. You know, I hear you went snowboarding there, so good for you. I'm kind of jealous because I was home moving boulders and working on the farm here, but I'll get out there with you soon. You know, we originally were, for today, as you know, we're going to talk about the trivium quadrivium, which is a classical system of logic. And I think it would have been great and very timely because of the lack of rational thinking out there, we'll say these days. And of course, we're going to do it a little bit differently, not just sort of a dry rehash of what a lot of people already understand about trivium quadrivium, but we're going to use it within a context of how a doctor or a physician or a health practitioner of any type could use logic when they're treating people, going through, you know, the diagnostic procedures, and also, you know, determining what a good, you know, treatment rationale would be. And so, we want to make it more of a live model, and like this is how you use it in real time, and how everybody, no matter what your profession or vocation, you should be using this. So we'll save that for another time, because as I was preparing that yesterday, my wife walked in with a couple old articles that we had written, and started reading one to me, and I was listening. I thought, well, that's pretty good, And as we write gardening columns for different papers and publications, and they get out there a little bit. They're well received. And so the one that I decided to use today was one that's like a history of our country. And there's a second article that, if we have time, we'll just kind of highlight that a little bit. And because that talks about all the health benefits and we'll call psycho-spiritual benefits of gardening. So that might be kind of fun. And both of these I put in a PowerPoint format, and I can make that into a PDF, and then we'll put the copies into the maybe into the Patreon group for the Patreons, because we won't have time to read both articles, fully today. So we'll leave that there for them. We'll kind of highlight some things. I might do some share screens here. And, what we really don't understand is that, agrarianism isn't just about farming. It's the basis of an entire country. And there was a time where, all the great civilizations, that were based on agrarian concepts, the people in those cultures understood that, and they were only able to reach enduring and, great heights when they had that kind of foundation. Of course, that's what we're doing here in Alfa Vedic, is we're creating a little prototype, because we understand it's not good enough to just, watch TV and argue about who won elections and things, when that really has nothing to do with anything in our lives. And it's really time for all of us to return to the soil, do non-centralized small farms in every location. That's the way we take our power back. And a lot of people now are saying, well, the country's gone. And there's part of me that, I'm a little bit dismayed with what I see right now. And they're saying, well, what do we do? And of course, that gets into all sorts of topics like, well, do we change our status? Do we reform our state assemblies? And, that's all good stuff. And, I'd say we're probably going to need to go there the way things are going. But first, we have to have a foundation. We have to be grounded. And that means going back to the principles of agrarianism. And I am going to put my voice in right now for a new third party next time around, which is the Agrarian Party. And I think it would not just be a great concept, but it would really alert people to what's needed at this time. So what I'd like to do maybe is just read the first article. And it's a couple pages. So if people can bear with it for about 10 minutes, I think it's worth it, because it really gets into the history of our country and the founding fathers' understanding and belief that, you cannot have a culture, let alone a society of any type, unless it's agrarian based. So there is another book that we got, my wife and myself got a lot of this information from, a woman in Great Britain, by the way, and forgive me, we were looking for the book yesterday. We'll find it. We'll put it up in our notes to give her full credit. But she did amazing research on the foundations of our country, the history of our country. And it's interesting that that one of our British brethren out there had to do it for us. So that's where we got a lot of our information. So here we go.
Do you need me to make you host so you can do a screen share?
Yeah, well, what do you think, Mike? Should I just, read it, or would it help if people are seeing the words? Because I can just read and then not interrupt the flow at all. It's up to you.
That's fine.
Whatever you think.
I mean, I would only screen share if there was like something to show graphically or image wise.
No, it's just words. So,
okay.
So listen up, folks. Okay, of course.
And for those out there who, in our community, there's a lot of people questioning history and questioning even the idea of that, the whole history of the United States and going back pre-1800s. I really love the Tartaria stuff. I love the impossible architecture uh, kind of investigation going on. But let's be clear here. There is a fundamental concurrence of historical narrative that goes across so many different levels here that relate back to the forefathers, the founding fathers, from the mystery schools to the ascended masters teachings to like core primary documents. To say that this stuff is nonsense and to just say now, oh, well, there was a great reset in the 1800s and now why even talk about this? That is, first of all, nobody in the impossible architecture scene, in the Tartaria scene, has any theory to explain how this all worked. Now, I agree that there's something going on there with the World's Fairs and with all that. And those that are listening that have been following this get what I'm saying. There's something there, and those guys are my brothers that and sisters that have been investigating this. But to discount the history of the United States, the Republic, and everything, that cynicism, that just to jump into these deep conspiracies is not going to help us. So, for me personally, because my family goes back to the Hales, which is Nathan Hale, who is a great patriot who actually went against his own brother for the Republic and was a spy. And, I regret that I have one life to give for my country. He's from my dad's side, who my grandma side were the Hales. And we actually track that back there in our family line. So, and nowhere in that family line does anybody say there was a mud flood. So I get it. I get there's weird stuff that goes on. This could go into a lot of trippy conversations I want to have this year. My only point of bringing this up, Bear, is that I just know from our community, there'll be people who will discount this right off the bat because of these, theories and this new information that's come up about Tartaria and the mud flood the last few years. And we can't let that get in the way of understanding these philosophies and the power of the story and the narrative we get from people like Thomas Jefferson, people we get from the founding fathers. So I just wanted to interject that in before you go in there, because I feel like I had to say that. It's been really bugging me for a while because I love the Tartaria stuff. I love diving into that. But until we get a better theory and understanding of what that is and how that happened and how those buildings were made, it's important that we stick to facts and we stick to historical, concrete knowledge that is evidentiary through multiple different avenues. And you're muted right now, Bear. There you go.
It's not about Tartaria only. It's about all subject matter that's been gaslighted and suppressed forever. And, Tartaria, I've done a lot of investigation too, and there's definitely some, real stuff there. And, like our last week's podcast, that was just kind of a recap. That was actually well received, by the way. We had quite a few people on there. We talked about 2021 being the great unmasking, the year of the unmasking. So, it's kind of a cute little thing to say because it kind of, in one sense, means F you to everybody that tries to make you wear a mask and cover up. But also, it's about unmasking the truth on every single level. And it was foretold that in this time, in the end times, and we always talk about end times meaning the end of time, and Armageddon actually means beginning. So, a little bit of a different twist than the book religions that are used to control us as well. And twisted the words of the Nazarene and all the great prophets. But this time was to be the time where no secrets would be allowed to exist. And look what happened in this last week. A lot of people are wringing their hands about what's going on in our country, but really sit back. And if you can kind of get emotionally detached, a lot of truth has come out. A lot of truth has been coming out for several years now, but really culminating in this last week. And now we know who the players are. We know who all the players are. And I'm still kind of hoping that there's a strategy behind the scenes to let this colossal crime play out so that, and to completion, so that all the bad actors would reveal themselves. And they, whether that's true or not, all the bad actors have revealed themselves. We know who everybody is. We know what side everybody is on. And, so we're going to be revealing the truth, not just our opinions, but based on, a lot of the research that we do. And we travel in some pretty heady circles, with some folks that are high up in military intelligence and, in all sorts of circles where they have some inside scoops. And, so that's going to be our source, not just repeating what other people are saying on YouTube. So with that being said, folks, forgive me for just reading here. We'll go back into discussion mode as quick as possible. But here's just a little historical overview. This is an article that my wife and myself wrote. We titled it "The Roots of Freedom." And we actually wrote this for 4th of July a year or so ago. And so here we go. And it begins, the 4th of July has become a holiday built upon caricatures from a time remote, with little relevance in today's world. Why did the founding fathers risk everything to create a new nation? From what wellspring did they find the resolve to face the hardships that would surely follow their audacious claim of sovereignty? We're taught of their passion for freedom, but what did freedom really mean to the early colonist? The colonists were an agrarian affair. The colonies were an agrarian affair. This we know for certain. It would surprise many, however, to realize how their affinity to the land became the driving force in birthing a new country. Farming and horticulture were counted as the most noble of pursuits, and one's right to till a single portion of the earth's surface was emblematic of freedom itself. The decision to formally notice the crown through the Declaration of Independence was not founded on a capricious notion. Regulations, taxes, permit fees, coercion to purchase British goods, and mandatory crop provisioning to Great Britain all contributed to the inevitable critical mass that precedes all times of great change. Gone were the emotional ties to Mother England, as new generations of colonists fully imprinted in the New World. The acknowledgement of a single creator as the universal authority left little room for earthly allegiances blasphemous to matters of spirit, while the heavy-handedness of the redcoats would tip the final scales. So, Michael, do you see any parallels in what's going on today and then?
Oh, just a few.
The redcoats are back, folks. Where's Paul Revere? Well, there's a lot of Paul Reveres, actually, and we're doing it ourselves. Okay, so self-determination. So how did gardening and agriculture become the single most influential element of a mindset that would eventually demand America's right for self-determination? The lives of 5 prominent founding fathers offers a most insightful time capsule. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, James Madison, and Benjamin Franklin all recognized that America's independence, financial and otherwise, was tenuous unless rooted in the soil itself. For Franklin, self-reliance was consequential to managing the land's natural resources as a means of sustenance and foundational to an equitable financial system. All 5 men were avid plantsmen, and their personal estates became the focus for crop experimentation, seed exchanges with neighboring farmers, and the primary source of medicine. Pretty cool.
Very cool.
The colonists themselves came to equate bountiful yields and their stewardship of the land as the political act most necessary toward the realization of independence for a fledgling nation. Every farmstead became an integral cog in a collective resilience capable of boycotting British goods while preparing to fight. So, Michael, it kind of sounds like what we're preaching all the time with our little project up here. Pretty neat.
Very cool. I mean, there's so much to unpack right here, right? The fact that really the core, and those became many presidents right there, were farmers. And not only just farmers, but they were tinkerers. We know they were inventors. They were the true definition of a Renaissance man, which is something that I like to think
Absolutely.
that you and I really engage in. Having a compassion about nature, but also a passion about creativity, investigation, and in going into all sorts of different realms of thought and hobbies. But I want to read something real quick, just a basic
Yeah, go for it.
definition of agrarianism, because, and this is from Britannica.com, but I think this is, I remember like studying this a little bit in philosophy, one of my philosophy classes at university. But this really hit home for me when I read this week. Agrarianism, in social and political philosophy, perspective that stresses the primacy of family farming, widespread property ownership, and political decentralization. Agrarian ideas are typically justified in terms of how they serve to cultivate moral character and to develop a full and responsible person. Many proponents of agrarianism revere nature, whether understood as natural phenomena or as God's creation. See, that it can go either way. I mean, this really encompasses everybody here. This is the whole AV fam right here. Respect tradition and experience, distrust ideology, and regard science and technology with skepticism. Now, we say a healthy skepticism is good, right? That's not a negative thing. That is the scientific method, really. Proponents of agrarianism believe that when individuals attach themselves to farming and a rural way of life, the required labor enhances their existence. Family and locale are rooted, allowing stable associations to develop that enable people to experience in non-acquisitive way, the goods of a grounded community, including leisure, friendship, love, art, and religion, or I'll put there too, spirituality. Right there. I mean, that is Alfa Vedic, dude, to a key, man.
I know and for sure bring on the Agrarian Party. So who are our first candidates for the Agrarian Party?
Well, I mean, the question there too is the party system grounded in the corporatization. And that's another thing too, that the agrarianism philosophy really counters, is the corporation, because they see the corporation, or we see the corporation, as an aspect of the greater state, the greater centralization. So is having a party, I guess what you're kind of getting at there is outside of the corporate sphere, or whether it's inside the corporate sphere of the United States Inc., it's still like a marketing thing, right? It's an awareness thing to develop awareness around the topic, kind of like these other third parties.
Yeah, and I was just talking in a political sense. The Agrarian Party, of course, would represent a true philosophy that an entire nation could hang on to, build a strong nation and people, and also a nation that would support people on every level, including the soul's purpose for incarnating on this plane in the first place.
Oh yeah, I hear your phone ringing.
Yeah.
And by the way, everyone, yes, we've been fully inundated with calls. Dr. Lando is, and something going on with Zoom right now. Forgive me here. I don't know what happened here, but I just bring this up because the phone's ringing. I'm sorry if we're not getting to everyone's emails and calls and everything. We have been completely swamped with and inundated with requests from farming, gardening, health, people with cancer, people with illness. It's just 6 of us. And it's so just letting everybody know, we will get to you. Join the co-op if you can. We've got our executive co-op meeting next Monday. We're trying our best. We're overwhelmed right now. So
Yeah.
anyways,
And
sorry for that.
Yeah, but we're working on it, and we're accomplishing a tremendous amount. So if people understand, it's not just us over here on Overwhelm. We're actually doing and accomplishing a lot. And for the many people that are brought to my attention that have health issues, my heart goes out to you, because that's my vocation, and that's why I got into the business in the first place, is to help people. I did retire my clinic some years ago, along with the staff and all the facilities, the technologies. There's limited things that I can do maybe on a consulting base these days. But one of the things we'll be doing on the property is not creating a new clinic so much to bring people in for treatment, but to train practitioners to do a lot of the lost arts that I was fortunate enough to learn. And also my own system that I devised. It is a synthesis of many things that, I've had a lot of requests for doctor types to learn. So, we'll be providing that. And I think that's the way we can reach most people. So for sure, if you're somebody that's tried to reach out, number one, you kind of go through several channels before it even ends up on my desk, a while later. And we try to get back to some of them we, again, just don't have time. So folks, thanks for your patience. So let's continue on with this fine article. Who wrote? Oh, that's right. We wrote that. I'm kind of liking this. Sometimes you don't read what you wrote for a while. And so anyway, I feel like I'm reading someone else's words here. So now we're going into the section of the article about the revolution.
Okay.
The unimaginable rigors of the Revolutionary War demanded the constant admonition of General Washington to his troops that they were free men fighting for the blessings of liberty. Amidst the grim outlook for the American troops and the crisis facing our commander-in-chief, he always found time for communications with his cousin, Lund Washington, the estate manager of his beloved home, Mount Vernon. Washington found moments of solace designing ornamental groves of North American native trees, white pine, red cedars, poplars, alabaster dogwood. After all, Mount Vernon was to be an American garden. While his love of trees and keen interest in agrarian design offered personal respite from the darkness of war, the general's farming instincts extended to the war effort itself. Washington mandated the planting of regimental gardens, thus providing vegetables for army rations and a source of comfort and encouragement to his battle-weary soldiers. 8 arduous years later, George Washington returned home. His vision of a nationhood built by farmers rather than military conquest was a brief time realized. America would be an agrarian society whereby our sword and spears have given place to the plowshare and pruning hook. He dreamed of a simple and fulfilling life as a farmer.
Wow.
Okay, so to continue, a new nation. Post-Revolutionary War brought different circumstances and new challenges to a country yet in its pre-adolescence. The bitter British aristocracy would organize a general European boycott of American goods in retaliation to a young upstart daring to compete against the protected commercial interest of the crown. John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, avid gardeners both, were called upon to counter these measures by establishing the international alliances most favorable for America's economic dependence. While traveling Europe, Adams and Jefferson took an equal interest to the gardens, design, and farming techniques of old Europe. Their reconnaissance mission included tours of the publicly celebrated estates of England to firsthand glean the numerous styles and agricultural elements of working farms. Back home in the New World, James Madison emerged as the first American environmentalist, as he witnessed the ruthless desecration of forest and soil in his native Virginia. He warned his countrymen that the ability of the United States to thrive was proportionate to the health of its environment. True to the founding fathers' inclination to merge philosophy and pragmatism, he believed man should conform his affairs within the symmetry of nature. Is that way cool or not?
Yes.
How many people really understand the mindset of these, what we call our founding fathers?
They were grounded in universal law.
I'm just so far beyond who do we have today in Washington? I mean, yeah, don't get me started.
Scoundrels and actors.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll just continue, and not too much longer. And Mike, interject with any conversation anytime.
Oh, this is amazing. Keep going. Very well written.
Okay. So thank you. Mass plantings of sugar maples, fruit trees, and other crops became the weaponry of choice to secure the independence of the new republic. While America realized its destiny as an aggregate of independent small farmers. Newly emancipated from the devious institutions of centralized banking, American nationals shunned wealth acquired by financial speculation as a crude form of gambling that could only bring ruin and destruction. In sharp contrast, horticulture was considered a science to enrich lives by providing food, medicine, financial stability, and aesthetics. Early colonists viewed one's connection to the earth akin to the acknowledgement of a creator and the source of the vast abundance available to mankind. It should come as no surprise that the current resurgence in gardening coincides with similar historical circumstances as those faced by our founding fathers. Whether your interest in gardening is the pursuit of a contemplative pastime or a means to provide food and medicine, it is the single most powerful act in living a self-determined life. And I'll finish off with just a little quote on this one article by Thomas Jefferson. Cultivators of the earth are the most valuable citizens. They are the most vigorous, the most independent, the most virtuous, and they are tied to their country and are wedded to its interest by liberty and the most lasting bonds. Thomas Jefferson. So I believe that completes that article. Yeah. There's one more that we can talk about later that gets more into the health attributes of agrarianism. And this was another article that we co-authored that we just titled The Fountain of Youth. So Michael, wow, it's just so uncanny what's going on right now, and reading those words, incredible. Well, and by the way, I really enjoy writing, and we want to get more written blogs. I stopped doing it a year or so ago just because I came to the conclusion that nobody reads anymore. So I was just writing for myself, but I'd like to start up again. So if we can get any feedback from folks to, let us know if they would enjoy reading things, in addition to our other electronic communication. So sorry, Mike, go ahead.
No, I think that's fantastic. And I would love to have more of those articles on Patreon for our co-op. I think, I really enjoy reading when you guys were putting those out, and those were put out actually in local newspapers and some other publications. Those were actually published, and they're fantastic because it's inspiring. It's inspiring to read the written word. Last night after hitting the slopes, I was reading my boys' bedtime story. I'm currently reading the Brian Jacques fantasy series, Redwall, Mossflower, if anybody knows those. And I read those as a kid. And, my kids will love to go read Captain Underpants and stuff, which is fine. They read that themselves. And this is what modernity gives them right now. It gives them this pulp kind of really nonsense stuff, which is witty and kind of funny and whatnot. But we're reading Brian Jacques last night, Jacques, sorry if I'm pronouncing his name incorrectly, which I read as a kid. And it's like 14 of those books. And it's just like cool kid fantasy, but it's written in a way where it's like Shakespearean to them, because it actually is proper grammar and an extension of their vocabulary. And it's important. I was talking to my wife about this last night. Like, our kids read. Like my older kid who's 9, he goes up and just reads. And our younger, he's more of an outdoorsman, but we are pushing that on them too. It's like, and a lot of kids don't read anymore. In fact, we've talked about this in other Alfacasts. In school, they're not reading. They're getting videos read to them, or they're videos of people talking to them for reading comprehension. So important. And let's get more of these done, Barre, because you're really good at it. I used to write papers in college for people. I enjoy it. I enjoy editing and stuff. So I think that would be great, and something we could add more value to the co-op. So interesting, Thomas Jefferson, going back to him, he, one of my favorite characters in history. I know he gets a lot of attention from neolibs and postmodern critics for being a slaveholder. And that's a whole other can of worms to get into, which we've discussed in the past. However, what he really stood for was universal law, right? Rationalism, morality in terms of the greater scope of divinity, and being tied to your connection with nature. And he says here, he maintained that farming rather than urban manufacture would more likely ensure the independence and strength of character necessary for the free citizens of a decentralized republic. And remember, the forefathers understood the power of having checks and balances and a decentralized republic where you don't have a corporation or a plutocracy develop, which we have now. And in order for that, you need a citizenry that is self-reliant, that is educated, that has a foundation of moral character. And of course, with the commercialization and industrialization from the late 1800s through the 20th century, we see the opposite of that with urbanity, with modernity. We see a social welfare system. We see neoliberalism, which is grounded to corporatization or corporatism. And we know that this is all related to centralizing power, which we're seeing. So agrarianism is the counter to globalism. And we've talked in the past the danger of mono agriculture, and we've seen that with what's happened in the last 10 years with the destruction of the small farm, and with what the USDA has done, the FDA. Like the USDA has been complicit with destruction of millions and millions of pounds of food because of monoculture, and where the market goes, where like they'll produce too many cranberries, for instance. I think 2018 they produced too many cranberries that drove the price down, where it was actually going to pay less than the cost to grow. So they destroyed a third of the cranberry crop, millions and millions of pounds of food. It's nonsense. So decentralization, is something I'm very, very adamant about. I feel like it is the number one solution to the world's problems, and getting to decentralizing our food through community sharecropping, community gardening, and then family gardening. I think every family should be gardening. Very simple. And figuring out so you don't have the monoculture issues with too much of one product being grown. It's like, okay, well, we've got yams and peas and beans covered. What are you guys growing? You guys have a better little microclimate where you're at to do, fruit trees and, vines and whatever, or taking the whole permaculture aspect and integrating a lot into one very dense place, like with the food forest idea, right? We can get a lot of food production in a very small area. All of this is empowering. So this is all stuff we'll be really diving into a lot this year. And it's something we do every day.
Yeah, and you did an amazing job. I know, Deb and I oversee the farm here. So we kind of live, in an off-grid situation and have a little bit of a bigger operation. But, you in your acres over at your place, you've done a phenomenal job just creating your food forest. And, I remember looking at that house when we were searching for this property here, years back. And we actually looked at that and contemplated buying it. And from the time that, we first saw it, from now going over to your place and looking what you've done, it's like night and day, totally different. It's like a little mini farm. And it's just an amazing example of how anybody can provide for themselves. The great thing about what we're talking about is you cut out all the middlemen, all the fluff, because if you look at the whole food chain, by the time, things get to your table, the amount of people in that, that flow are all middlemen. And, only at the very beginning is there actually somebody that had their, hands in the dirt and was, working and growing something. But then even the farmer himself is, controlled by the dictates of the marketplace, price fixing, governments ordering, destruction of crops, or demanding that you don't plant, or just farmers saying, look, I'm going to lose money if I plant crops, so I'm not planting this year. And, we'll be talking more about the coming food shortage. They're not coming, they're already here. They just haven't quite caught up with the average person yet, but they will this year, most assuredly.
And I would say the food quality shortage too. I think they'll be able to keep the food in the Walmarts, but it's just going to get more and more depleted of nutrients. It already is. Like, even we talk about how organic food in most grocery stores is deplete of most minerals, and it's highly deficient. So when you go to the new, it's funny, it's crazy. Like, the new Walmart is Whole Foods. Like, people think they are so elevated by going to an Amazon owned Whole Foods, but most of that organic produce is monocropped, and it is, negligent in terms of health benefits. So it's not to cut you off there, but I think in order to keep the Ponzi going, they're going to keep the shelves, do everything in their power to keep the shelves full, but it's going to get worse. It's like what we've seen. I was talking with my wife yesterday because we were coming back from skiing, and my kids like In and Out. So we went to In and Out. I was going to go to this other local little deli, and it was closed. So I was talking about how when I was a kid growing up in SoCal, how I liked McDonald's, even though my parents rarely let me go to McDonald's, but I liked it because I feel like McDonald's, even back then when I was in the 80s, was way better than it is now. We've seen, even in the fast food realm, like I'm sure McDonald's in like the 60s when it started was actually probably kind of legit. I don't know, and they, through the markets, through the corporatization and globalization, I think every month, every year, they're slimming it down. They're like figuring out shortcuts, right? And ways to take the real food out and cut corners. And to now where we're at, where it's just all like soy byproducts and probably insects and who knows what's in this food. It's all fillers and chemicals, to the point where fast food is, we talk about this all the time, it's just straight poison. Where when I was a kid, I would go to McDonald's every now and then. And now I don't allow my kids to eat that stuff. And I think even In and Out's probably way worse than it used to be back then. And so anyways, my point is, I feel like they're going to do their best to keep and we will see the shelves thinning out, but I think they'll do their best to keep the food so we don't have mass food riots at least in the United States. But it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. So you got to grow your own food.
And it's a little bit disturbing when you find out that, studies reveal the presence of human DNA in a lot of the meat products. Maybe that's just somebody blowing their nose on the assembly line or something, but it seems to be pretty universal with people that investigate on that level. So, wow. But anyway, I grew up in a time in a community where we didn't have fast foods. I can proudly say I've never been to a McDonald's in my entire life also. Wow. But, back to farming, think of how much less expensive food would be if you bought it from a local farmer, from farm to table, which is, one of the new little trendy things out there with certain restaurants. Well, every community should be farm to table. Now, food is, pretty hefty part of everybody's budget these days. And right there, think of the savings, not just financially, but in your health and, paying for healthcare down the line when you're eating real inundated or nutritious food. And like you said, Michael, organic food these days is devoid of nutrition. At best, organic food bought in one of these supermarkets is got maybe 30% of the minerals and other nutrients that should be there in the first place. And if a food, even if it's organically grown, and I'm not a big fan of organically certifying things because it's just a big political scam now.
Mhm.
And of course, another way to raise revenue. We do everything on the farm here biodynamically, but I'm not going to go in this organic certification. There's no way I'm jumping through hoops and conforming practices in order to get a certification, when in fact a lot of the hoops I have to go through are going to decrease the quality of the food we're now growing biodynamically, because we're just trying to conform to some of these standards in order to get a piece of paper and pay somebody money to get that. So folks, forget about organic certification. It's really meaningless. The things that we don't grow ourselves here that, go into some of our products where we have to get, other ingredients, and we're working quickly to grow as much of our ingredients as possible. But the things we do get elsewhere, I get a personal relationship with the suppliers. It's not about, oh, is this organically certified? I want to know on the ground, what are you guys doing? And in some cases, we end up buying the non-organic ingredients because they're much higher quality. We're not saying that all organic food is bad, but it's not at all what you think it is. And the chain stores now that have monopolized that industry have not only practiced, predator corporatism by putting all the really cool mom and pop health food stores that started sprouting up in the 60s and 70s and 80s. Not only are they all put out of business, but in exchange, we've got a decrease in the quality of our food. And that might be a good segue into Article 2, which I won't read the whole thing. We'll save this for our patrons here, but I'll just maybe read the first page, just kind of set the stage of what this article is about. And then we can maybe list some of the health attributes that this article talks about related to gardening.
Yeah, because I was just gonna
go ahead.
mention the important thing too of eating seasonally, and how I wanted to relate this to health, because when you're eating seasonally, when you're growing your own food, in the chat right now, we're talking about winter growing. And I've really put a lot of effort into growing food during the winter, converting raised beds into low tunnels, for instance, with certain frames I've created, just figuring out stuff, right? And using really high grade greenhouse coverings and stuff like that for the wind and rain. And it's working. I'm being able to grow. I kind of got a little behind this year because we integrated chickens into our little homestead here. And we don't really have a homestead. It's like a suburban homestead, even though we're not in suburbia. We live up in the mountains, but we're on grid. And anyways, and they kind of ruined a lot of my raised beds. And I've learned that we've got a chicken palace now where they're in and they're comfortable and all that. But so anyways, but the ability to grow food in the winter is something that I think our forefathers and people totally understood. It's just like knowing what the winter crops are, and then and eating seasonally, like whether that be turnip, your root vegetables, right, your turnips, your carrots, your hardy winter greens, and then with using permaculture and using advanced, like newer ideas of bringing in companions that work together well and keep each other healthy, and doing no dig and all these. There is innovation happening too. It's not like we can't innovate, right? So anyways, but the ability to eat seasonally to your health, I wanted to ask you, maybe we could talk about after you read this article. I think our bodies, because of thousands of years of eating seasonally and not being in a globally, a globalized food system where we're eating oranges in December, or eating tomatoes in December, shipped up here from Mexico or wherever, depending on where we're from. And I think eating seasonally actually is probably better for your health. So sticking to the seasonal vegetables and fruits or whatever, according to where you live, your body wants that. It hungers for that. So that's just a theory I have. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe because some of humanity has always lived in subtropical places, maybe that's not correct. But that was just a theory that I'd come up with recently about our health.
Yeah, I think it's beyond a theory, because my experience, the healthier you get, the cleaner your machinery is running. You crave what's growing seasonally. Your tastes change with the seasons. And, that's a lot of people say that they just don't crave the same thing in the summertime as they do in the wintertime. And of course, there's great value to understand, not just nutritionally speaking, but understanding the energetics of foods. And in the practice of Chinese medicine, which I've done for a long time, it's about balancing the energy in your body. It's about achieving harmony within all the organ and meridian systems. And if you're going through like the winter months as we are now, and it's cold and damp, then you need those foods that are going to lend more of a warming, drying quality, perhaps, in order to balance out the next natural energetics that your body is exposed to. And the meridian system of the body, what people have to understand, sure, it traverses through all the organ systems and things, but what the meridian system really is, it's a homeostatic mechanism that appraises the human body all the time of what's going on in the external environment. And it's a constant exchange of energetics and information. And that's what the meridians are for. Just a little segue into something else. Sorry for another tangent.
That was
But,
great.
within other fields now, there's been identified beyond what even the acupuncturists understood back then, unique internal energy flows and qualities within every organ. And now we can work on an organ by organ situation more for internal homeostasis. And then when that's coupled with a good balance of the meridian system that interacts with the external environment, then you've got the perfect, just a perfect communication between all parts of yourself and everything outside of yourself, even though it's really not outside of yourself. It's a seamless web of informational fields based on waveform transmission and, all the stuff that we always talk about. So let's go, let me just read the first couple paragraphs here, and then we can list a few of the health benefits of gardening. And I'll spare you reading the whole thing, but let's just see. I haven't read this in ages, so let's see what we talked about here. The fountain of youth. Every avid gardener has that aha moment when it occurs that there's more to tilling the soil than meets the eye. Early on, I attended a class in garden design taught by a horticultural professor with a prior incarnation in the development of weapons of mass destruction. This guy actually, was in the weapon business. So operating, in the development of weapons of mass destruction, operating from beyond the limits of the Earth's atmosphere. So that's what this guy did, this professor. But he's now teaching garden design. The irony of his conflicting vocations was not lost, as he was now dedicated to giving and growing new life. One thing he said in particular that struck me in the many years since is that gardening increases a lifespan more than 20 years. To date, extensive research has continued to corroborate his astonishing statement. Studies have yielded a variance in findings and numbers, but the overwhelming conclusion is consistent. Gardening is beneficial to the human body. This understanding has now been formalized within a discipline known as horticultural therapy. And Michael, I know you're aware, but for the benefit of our audience, we've been talking about one of the primary programs we want to launch in the next phase of our farm operations here is classes in horticultural therapy. And of course, an extra benefit for us is that we'll get some people weeding our gardens for us. But it's, we're out there every day, doing this stuff ourselves. And at the end of every day, we're never tired of doing it. It's hard work, but that is one of the things we want to do here on the farm. Go ahead. You want to say something?
I was just going to say, heal yourself. Come dig some trenches.
Yeah, pull those weeds. Okay, so where were we here? So history. People have always found peace and solace in nature. Mankind's first recorded use of horticulture as a treatment for the mentally disturbed goes back to ancient Egypt. Court physicians discerned the calming and healing effects of gardening on the human psyche. This recognition was retained and further implemented within clinical settings in countries such as the United States, England, and Spain during the 1700s and 1800s. The people-plant connection was well accepted as an effective approach in the treatment for disease. Dr. Benjamin Rush, one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence and a professor at the Institute of Medicine and Clinical Practice in Philadelphia, also considered America's first psychiatrist, opened the door for horticulture in the treatment of mental illness. He duly noted and substantiated the curative effect that field labor in a farm setting had on people suffering from mental illness and those combating what is commonly known today as post-trauma stress disorder as a consequence of the Revolutionary War. Today, horticultural therapy is practiced worldwide in institutional settings from hospitals to prisons as gardening programs assist in the rehabilitation of both mental and physical disability. How might you benefit from putting your hands in the soil? So then we just go and start listing some things. Any comments so far, Mike?
Well, I would say one of the big comments is that, as far as health benefits, of course, you have the grounding aspect where I end every Alfacast with this: go outside, get your hands in the dirt. So we know in the technological era we live in now, with the dirty electricity and the EMFs and everything, we're supercharged, right? With all this positive ions and everything, and to ground in the earth is important. But I would say beyond that is the information we pass, the more holistic mindset of with the plant life, with the microbiome, or excuse me, with the fungi and the bacteria, and that we're literally engaging with there. I feel like there's a kind of informational pass through that you have with just the intention of even growing something is good for us. So I think we need to even get beyond just it's the grounding aspect. There's something much bigger involved with going out and practicing horticulture, whether that be putting the seeds in your mouth before you plant them, to even just the act of planning out your garden. There's so many aspects to it beyond just the physical. We try to always, with Alfa Vedic, get beyond that, right? So I want to explore more of this this year on all these health benefits of gardening, of planting trees. Another thing that was interesting, I remember David Avocado Wolf, our homie, who was talking, he's like, since as a kid was secretly planting trees, which I think is a hilarious story. But he talks about,
I love that.
Yeah. He talks about how with planting, I don't know if it was cannabis or ayahuasca or something but he was, he got to a point where you didn't even have to ingest or take in the plant medicine to have the effect. By just interacting with it and growing it, he was getting those informational fields to him, which is wild. So there's a greater understanding of the waveform mechanics and stuff going on here with participating in Mother Nature in this way.
And speaking of cannabis, another famous quote that I have to paraphrase, so sorry if I butcher it, but you'll get the gist of it. Thomas Jefferson again once stated, "My favorite moments are overseeing my garden from the veranda while smoking my cannabis pipe."
Wow.
So
interesting.
So they're hitting.
There's an interesting comment here. Someone said about Thomas Jefferson, they thought he was just more of an intellectual or more somebody who just actually didn't get his hands dirty. Do you know anything about that, or do you feel like he really did walk the talk?
No, he really did do it, and we did get into some research to that end. And
okay.
He was out there. Of course, he had field hands and all the, the folks and assisting him on the farm, but he was out there working himself for sure. Yeah. Okay, so want to list, maybe we can start listing a couple categories about benefits of gardening, and then we can go more specifically from there as far as what we want to get into. So benefits of gardening. 1, lowered risk in the occurrence of the following ailments: a reduction in diabetes, heart disease, blood pressure, and osteoporosis, to name a few. In men 50 years and older who take up gardening consistently 2 to 3 times per week. So that was one study finding. And yes, FDA, we are stating a wild health claim that gardening helps your health. So bite me if you don't like it. Okay, number 2, exercise. It assists in weight loss, increases flexibility, and increases physical strength, and thereby reducing the risk of falling injuries. Gardening can burn as many calories in 45 minutes as compared to 30 minutes of aerobics training. Weeding burns as many calories as walking or bicycling at a moderate pace, and manual push mowing burns as many calories as playing tennis. Medicine. Plants are the source of real medicine that your body can wrap its head around. In the absence of synthetic substances that override natural processes with predictable side effects, which of course we know are actually effects, not side effects. Even today, the home gardener can grow herbs and spices proven to enhance longevity and quality of life. Next one, alleviation of depression through socialization. Depression in later life is a common occurrence in nursing home populations, and the nearly 800,000 seniors widowed yearly. By and large, this depressive symptomatology is unrecognized and untreated. A simple and effective treatment for those feeling isolated and alone is to provide a garden setting that brings seniors together. Social relationships are forged through a shared endeavor, while the natural nurturing inclination of elders finds outlet through tending a garden. And, you know, Michael, as you're aware, through some of the programs that my wife and myself have been involved with, where we teach gardening skills to the community, a good part of the students are elders, and it does exactly what we just read. You know, they have a social outlet. And you just seeing the light come on in people's eyes is, you know, just really made our efforts worth it, I'll tell you. Okay,
fantastic.
so let's see. Where are we here?
And I'll say same with the kids too. We have the kids gardens and stuff we do here with the kids, and they really get into it.
So let's just go. We'll finish with the benefits of gardening. Then we can just I can put this PowerPoint away and we can just talk. So plants in the individual. Noise and overwhelming sensory assault are the unfortunate norm in today's world. Environments predominated by plants provides a counteractive atmosphere to habituated stress, fear, anger, and general muscle tension. Just a 4 to 6 minute visual encounter with plant life has been documented through physiological indicators to have restorative and stress relieving effects. That's pretty neat.
That's very cool.
Physical rehabilitation. Accidents or disease-causing disabilities pose a most significant challenge for those in their golden years. The demands include an ability to adapt while taking the necessary steps toward rehabilitation. Gardening tasks are rich and varied, and finding one possible within the restrictions of most conditions is a certainty. Any gardener will always welcome an extra set of hands, and skill level is not an issue. So, rehab. Healthy gardens, healthy gardeners. Growing and eating organic fruits and vegetables has become one of America's fastest growing hobbies for retiring baby boomers. Even the organics found in natural food markets, let alone the commercially grown toxic fertilizer-fed food found in a supermarket, cannot compete with the nutrient-rich produce possible through a garden to table. One of the most common afflictions facing seniors is malnutrition, and what class of citizenry is best suited to teach our children the value of growing your own? Last one, get grounded and play in the dirt. Soil is an incredibly rich source of soil-based microorganisms, commonly termed SBOs. Regular handling of the soil with bare hands exposes the body to SBOs with a noted boost to immune system function. Contact with the soil also provokes a discharging effect of harmful positive electrons, which you already mentioned, Michael, acquired when in the proximity of Wi-Fi, smart meters, and the cell towers, to name a few. The Earth acts as a ground and assists the body in the disposal of these electromagnetic frequencies, proving deleterious to human health. So I think that's good enough, and I'll put up the whole article later.
Yeah, let's put those up on Patreon if you guys want to see those. We'll throw those up there and just to the public, and then we'll have some more special articles on there for the co-op, and also I think we'll be doing more kind of 5-10 minute instructional videos for the co-op specified for soil science, ionization protocols, that kind of stuff. We've been getting a lot of requests for that. But back to this topic of health and horticulture, we know that there is great health benefits of just going out into a forest, right? Hugging a tree literally is impactful to your health positively. And so there's a resonance with nature. But I, once again, will stress the concept of going the next step and actually taking a creative enterprise of engaging with nature to grow your own food, to innovate with how you are maximizing your ability to grow food, grow medicine. I feel like there's some kind of exchange there. There's an informational exchange. You're engaging in the divinity of who we are as divine creators with Mother Nature. And that just seems to me be, yes, going for a walk in the woods is great. I think it's amazing, but going to the next step and growing your own woods on your property and engaging in the aspect of more abundance by growing stuff, by planting stuff, there's something there. There's something there that's above and beyond just walking in the woods. I don't know.
And there's a lot more going on than meets the eye, obviously. When you delve into studies of, theosophy and the old underground schools that kept the truths alive for humanity for centuries, that led to the anthroposophical movement and, Rudolf Steiner and some of the people that we mentioned on this show. And they talk about the living intelligence behind all of plant life. And what they talk about does not stretch my imagination, because for whatever reason, my wife and myself both have had the same experiences since childhood, in that we, grew up in rural areas, but always had a great affinity for just being alone, even as children and even through adolescence, out in nature. And then also having visuals of things that I think people don't normally see, that are, more living in a synthetic environment. And in those original teachings, they talked about trees. We'll start there. They say that every tree, and they had names for these things, but, loosely termed, they called it a tree keeper, which is a consciousness, a living entity that was responsible for the maintenance and the purpose of that tree growing there within that guild, as we call them, permaculture, but within that forest setting or orchard setting. And so those are living intelligences, just like in our human body, that we believe is who we are, and, which has really nothing to do with who we are. It's a projection. Of course, the real us is that intelligence that projected ourselves into the simulation in the first place, for this purpose of the soul's journey. And all of the other life forms, especially the life forms that are the mirror image of the human experience, which happens to be the botanical, genre of existence, they have living intelligences. And the tree keepers, are something that I never forgot once once I was exposed to that concept. And, when we walk through the forest here, and there's just, I don't know how many trillions of trees and plant life and everything. And to fathom that every single one of those life forms is a living, breathing, self-conscious, sentient being that is waiting for us to not just recognize that, who they are and what their purpose is and their whole service to humanity in the first place, but they're waiting to open into a very intricate and intimate dialogue with each one of us. And again, I can say, believe it or not, but that's true. That does happen. And that is all, I think, part of the most beneficial things that I've experienced, living a good deal of my life in nature, surfing, farming, and all the things. It's always been about being in the elements. And, when humanity gets to that level of understanding and experience, it's game over. That's when we enter into the final golden age that we're now entering into, and why we're seeing all the shenanigans happen, in front of our face, because the few folks that wherever they came from, whether they're off planet or some kind of entities, or if they're just humans that are totally twisted, it's a very small percentage of life on this planet. And so the antidote to all the problems that we see now being caused by these small groups of people, or whatever they are, is being out in nature, which goes back to the beginning of our talk. That's the foundation of a nation, and that also should be the foundation of our personal life and existence.
Well, and the irony is these mega elites, or we don't want to give them that kind of name because they're not elite at all, but these technocrat guys at the top that most people don't, we're not talking about even the Rothschilds and the Bill Gates. Those are like the kind of soldiers for these elite bloodlines. They live in nature. They have manors in chateaus, and they're out in the forests, and they're surrounded by nature. So they get it. Like, I really feel like that Matt Damon movie, I forgot what it's called, that they're pushing for that, where most of humanity is toiling in these like shanty cities, or they have this like Gaia kind of garden, because we live in the garden planet. Earth is meant to be Eden, right? It's meant to be that. Like, that's how, if we just let everything go, it would go back to that. All the cities would get overtaken very quickly, and plants that plant technology would take over. So I feel like they get it, and they're just tyrannical they despise humanity. They see humanity, who were spiritually tapped in, to be lesser than them, as the lady Rothschild, or who was the Rothschild who was asked in public, like, this guy came up to her and was calling them out, and she's like, you're lucky we let you even live. That's how they look at us. Meanwhile, they are, doing their own inversion of reality and nature, but they also know they need it to be on this plane. And maybe in the end, you're right. Maybe they don't like nature either, but they're just using it right now to protect themselves against all the toxic poisons they're putting on the planet. So they shield themselves in their manors out in the countrysides and places like the Black Forest, and where they hunt humans, all sorts of craziness that we've heard about.
Just fun pastimes. Yeah. A lot of these folks too, I know. Okay, I was going to mention somebody else who I'd like to get on here as a guest, somebody that I interacted with a long time ago that had direct experiences of witnessing what you just talked about. Oh, yeah. So anyway, these so-called elites also have a lot of expendable time. And with that time, they understand that, humanity is here to really explore options and all the nooks and crannies of consciousness. And that's what they do. Some of the books and authors and prophets and, all the great ones that we reference all the time, they read those people. Walter Russell was the darling of, royalty throughout Europe, and, all of these bloodlines, they just wanted to be with this guy because they understood that, he had a perspective of truth, and that's what their lives are about, is exploring their potential. But of course, those things that they learn, they invert in order to suppress our ability to access the same level of awareness, because they don't want everybody out there having a lot of time on their hands. That's why we have the 80-hour work week right now. And for the people that are still working, that is, they want to reserve all of those secrets that really were never secrets in the first place for themselves, for control, obviously. But that's going to boomerang in a real bad way on them. And it's actually happening right now. So, great talk, Michael. And I think it's a great one to start off the new year, because I personally would really like to hit, the whole agriculture, self-sufficiency, not just for the sake of survival, although I think that's going to come in handy this next year, but, just for that internal empowerment that comes from this. And it's not just about, talking about trendy subjects like permaculture farming. And I know those are a lot of buzzwords, and people are really interested in that and those topics. And that's a very positive thing, but we've actually been doing it for a good number of years. So I think, what I'd like to do is share what we've learned and help people come to the awareness that it's more than just growing a little food and saving some money or improving your health. Those are all amazing consequences, but it goes much, much deeper than that.
Yeah, and back to agrarianism, the whole concept here, it really hits home on so many levels. The family farm, right? And the rhythms of rural life. Here, I'm reading more from this article. In their estimation, this is from the more modern agrarianist philosophy. A society dominated by science, technology, and industry, in a country inclined to favor the urban over the rural population, would suffer an impoverishment of manners. What are we seeing now? Look at TikTok. God. Art. Look at culture right now. We don't have art. Movies are horrendous. I'm someone who's a cinephile. I know you and Deb and our whole crew. Like, I mean, Bryden and Steph make movies. Like, I love film. I can't watch. Modernity itself is so depressing. Music, the culture is, and I love culture. So anyways, manners, art, education. Education is pathetic. Community, where is the community? And spirit, no spirit. Materialism. The family farm and the rhythms of rural life were essential to a good society. Such a life would encourage consonance with nature, discourage the ambitious pursuit of material goods, permit the leisurely enjoyment of family and community. We know that the nuclear family's been under attack for a long time, and allow the appreciation and experience of the spiritual and the aesthetic. I think a lot of times agrarian communities are definitely looked down upon by the intellectual kind of class as backwoods hillbillies that have no sense and sensibility, have no appreciation for the aesthetic. Meanwhile, as we were mentioning earlier, the true Renaissance man seems to be agrarian in mindset. One, you have more time in your hands once you're really situated where you have your food supply dialed and you're not having to work 9-to-5 job, and you kind of are more self-sufficient. You have time to read, you have time to engage in craftsmanship, woodworking, writing, the arts, painting, these classical arts that we've seen lose. And even in the modern realm, I'm a web developer, I dabble in crypto, and let's just face it, crypto's on fire right now because the dollar's crashing. But we have time, you have extra time to follow your passions, and you're not kind of enslaved in the culture, the mainstream culture, which I call Babylon now, which is really Babylonian, which is all spellcraft and black magic and wizardry in the mainstream modernity. But it's really quite illuminating to think that actually the rural folk are the ones that are, allowing for real progression of ideas, because we understand that thought creates reality. And when you have the time to actually think, to separate, to get away, and not just be on your phone inside, these channeled cultural memes, things, you're on Netflix, you're constantly getting home from work and then just staying distracted. What's Monday Night Football tonight? And then I got to catch CNN for the news, which is just really entertainment and propaganda. And then, I got to hit the hay, got to get up and hit it all again tomorrow. And then, it's all of a sudden 40 years of your life have gone by. And what have you done? So agrarianism is much more than even just being a farmer.
Yeah, and an additional point that I didn't mention in that article is it raises your IQ. I remember when I was in graduate school, I was in the class and I was exposed to some studies that they developed different IQ quotients compared to the classic IQ test. It's designed just to see how, you can fit as a little, brick in the wall kind of thing, as this song goes, right? And but the true IQ quotient is based on your real tangible abilities on the ground to just deal with life, problem solve. And IQ, of course, the most important part of IQ is not just your critical thinking abilities and your problem solving capabilities, but it has to do with your emotional IQ. And if you see what's going on by our esteemed leaders in Washington now, I mean, they're like, they aren't even adolescents, they're children that are acting out. They have no awareness of anything other than their own egocentric goals. And just, when you're in nature, when you live on the land, as we already mentioned, the land itself, takes all those toxic energies and, transmutes them and leaves you in that state of calm where you can just, clearly differentiate between what's real and what's not. So in the study I was about to refer was they found that different peoples that they studied throughout the entire planet at that time, the people that came out with the highest IQ scores based on these new set of quotients were nomadic people. People that obviously lived, on the earth, or, and also, their life was just basically going with the flow and adapting to circumstances and understanding not just how to survive in, whatever location they find themselves in, but actually to thrive. How many people today, with their little degree in communications or whatever BS they, think they earned in college, are going to be able to go out and survive, a single day if the deli's all closed down or something. It's, and then we've talked about on our show too, about the 8th grade exit exam, that you can find online that was given to 8th graders, during the 1800s. And nowadays you wouldn't find college students that could pass that thing. Yeah. In fact, college graduate students wouldn't be able to pass that thing. So yeah, we've really, we talk about Common Core and it's about lowering the bar to the lowest common denominator, but Common Core started a long time ago. And, we were brought in touch with some folks by way of G. Edward Griffin circles, this guy by the name of Norman Dodd, who, really gave evidence to how all the institutions of learning were infiltrated in order to create the beginnings of what we now call Common Core, which is, the great dumbing down process. And I know you and I, Michael, share similar frustrations when, we don't want to argue or be at odds with anybody, but just, maybe want to have a discussion and enter different information or verifiable facts into a discussion, and people do not have the emotional or the intellectual ability to process the information or even want to. So again, going back to the land, getting away from all the artificial constructs and, discharging your own negativity and retraining your nervous system to be in that original Schumann frequency, that we call the Earth's natural frequency, that is all possible with one simple solution, which is just get outside.
Yeah. And so I think a lot of people are, still in the cities. And, one thing that are listening to this and like, how can we do this? And we could talk a little bit about that. I mean, I'm an example of somebody who did it. But, I guess the other question is, can we ever have a common ground between urbanity and rural life and agrarianism in a future realm? I could see where we have, because there are some amazing things with city life, and it seems like there are, to go into the city center where the farmer comes in with his family to come see a play or something. Or I mean, back in the day, the plays would come to the rural place, right? You'd have traveling circuses, traveling theaters that would come and set up, and you would have your culture that way. But can there be a compromise between urbanity, between city life, and the farm rural life? And maybe, I mean, if we had a truly holistic minded, non-corrupted civilization where the technocrats are gone, let's say, and we've had this awakening, is it a place where it's like going to Emerald City or something from the Wizard of Oz, where you go in and maybe your kids go for a little bit and you have an experience there. And then maybe you even have a place in the city you go stay at, and you go back to your rural place. I mean, is there a place for city? Or is that just sci-fi world that will always end up kind of self-destructing, that will always turn into corporatism, that will always turn into anti-human? I don't know. I'm just, I mean, I kind of always question this stuff. What do you think?
Well, that'll only degrade if we keep allowing it. And, everybody's sitting back wringing their hands right now saying, what the heck do we do with, what's now obvious to most people? And it's like, well, we allowed it. And, if you walk into stores with a mask on, if you keep filing your little pieces of paper and paying your fees and penalties and purchasing your license to get permission, well, who's to blame? We're funding the beast. And, going back to, is it possible for a city or an urban, environment to be healthy? Well, what about the hanging gardens of Babylon? Every city should be, living structures with community gardens. And not only do the plants, bring, possibilities of food production locally to urban environments, but they also are enriching the atmosphere, with oxygen. And there's absolutely no reason why every city, why Los Angeles can't be a garden paradise. And, there's also a reason, speaking of Los Angeles, why that famous example a few years back, where one particular community took it upon themselves to cultivate a pretty large area within the inner city in Los Angeles, because it was just laying there and, there are no buildings and nothing was going on. And they had a flourishing garden, which, was feeding people. The community just all rose to the occasion. They were out there all lending a hand and everything. And of course, the city mayor and the administrator shut it down. We can't have that. So, now in its place, you've got homeless and syringes laying on the ground and basically, predators taking advantage of other people. So it all goes back to us. We can be proactive in that we can, even in a city environment, even if you have a little balcony on your townhouse or something, you can create, a little garden, in containers. You can go into your kitchen and have an alive sprout garden. You can do all these things right now, which is going to empower you in many ways. And then stop giving them our obedience and energy. And as you know, Mike, I've traveled in circles for many years where we have deliberately disobeyed, and some of us paid a heavy price for that. I did, and some people I know paid the ultimate price. But when do people stand up?
Yeah.
And if we think that right now they're going to stop just because they've got, the perfect trifecta as far as controlling all three branches of government, we still don't have to go along with it. They can do whatever the heck they want. We also know that it's not even our constitutional republic in the first place. It's a
Fictional.
corporate structure and really has nothing to do with it. So why do we keep giving them our power? That's an easy question to answer, by the way, and it's called fear. We're afraid. And I'd say if there's any one goal in anybody's incarnation on this plane, it's to eradicate fear within yourself and do anything within your power to deal with it. Go into the heart of it. Don't shy away with it from it. If something freaks me out, I go, okay, just roll up your sleeves, go right into it, right in the heart of it. And usually when you're in the heart of it, it's just like being in the heart of a storm. You realize, wow, it's actually pretty calm in here. It's only when I was on the peripheral, afraid to dip my toes into the water that, it did all the bad things to my psyche and my body. But now that I'm just like, screw it, what have I got to lose? And I believe humanity is at that place right now, especially in this country right now, where what have we got to lose? Because it's all been taken away from us already. We are now back on the plantation. And, if anybody wants to bring in, the whole thing of the history of this country, well, the original people in this country, fought a war. So they thought over equality and, they wanted this place to be different. And, they didn't want the plantations and have predators taking advantage of other people. This country is very unique in that respect and should be respected for it. So here we are now, the same people that the so-called progressives are backing and endorsing are the very ones that have put us all on the plantation, regardless of, race, religion, or otherwise. And if we think that, well, we'll just be on a nice benevolent plantation, we'll get our nice little paychecks and, just get to sit around and smoke weed all day long, we don't have to work anymore. Well, that's going to backfire pretty quick, and they're going to keep putting the screws on us. And that little subsistence check is going to get smaller and smaller. More is going to be expected of you. And that is not a way to live. And if anybody doubts that that's where we're headed, then all we have to do is study a little bit of history. And then included in that history is a recognition of the same bloodlines in those historical challenging times, and realize that they're the same bloodlines behind what's going on today. And they never quit. They only retreat and do things a little bit more cleverly. The British never retreated. They did not concede victory in the Revolutionary War. They just brought the city of London to our shores, not the city of London proper, but the financial center city of London. And they have conquered us with a monetary system and also severing us and our ties from the land.
Yeah. And they are masters of paperwork. So they use it. Yeah. They use it through paperwork. And of course, we know the Zionists are the heavy players here, along with the Jesuits. And those are all just players too, under the bloodlines. I mean, it goes deep. And rather than, for me, it's like, rather than pointing fingers at that, I'd rather just like why I'm stoked to be focusing on agrarianism. It's like, I'd rather focus. I still think that's all fictional. Still, it's all built on corporate fiction, and getting real and getting based into the soil and our community is very empowering. Otherwise, you can spin off into conspiracy zone forever. And it seems apparent, though, like with this whole thing that happened this week, right, with the storming of the Capitol and how crazy it looks and how it looks like it's all a psyop once again in a narrative. Well, in 2017, left-wing protesters stormed the Capitol building, and they took it over and bragged about it, and there wasn't a peep about it, because it was a cause that was good for the corporate state. It was approved by really the true enemy of freedom and liberty, which is the American regime. This American regime is not our republic. It's not the true people. It is now the corporate superstructure that runs everything. It's big tech. It's both establishment parties. It's big pharma. It's the billion-dollar corporations, the transnational elite, the FBI, the CIA, all the three-letter agencies. It's every mainstream outlet. It's every single news source. It's every newspaper. It's the city. It's the federal police, which we know are all corporatized. It's all the cities are all the corporatized versions of them. All the political NGOs, all the academia, the universities. That is the American regime. That is the regime. That's the corporatist regime. That is not us. So going back to agrarianism and the rural people, we get that, and we understand we can take our power back by coming together, getting our own plots of land. To me, the cities have fallen. Now, that's not to say, I mean, it would be a beautiful thing to have a revolution within the cities if enough brave people woke up there. And one thing with 2020 we saw was a lot of urbanites, and it was annoying to us that they were coming out to escape the hell of the cities of masks and social distancing by going to all the national parks and coming out and coming to our beautiful river and trails and taking it over. And it's really easy to get frustrated with that and be like, go back to the cities. But on the flip side of that, maybe that injection of nature and that interaction with it will wake something up, like it did that was my journey. Like, we got a travel trailer, and we were living in Redondo Beach, and we started going camping a lot and going to the national parks and getting outside, and it woke something in us. And it's like, I don't want to be in the city anymore. I want to be around this. So maybe
You used to camp in our front yard.
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, maybe there's something to this, and maybe it doesn't have to be Hunger Games, where it's just the silly quote unquote elitist type of intellectual class that are completely nonsense, wearing their frocks and ridiculous makeup and costumes, like in the book series or in the movie, where then you have all the people in the suburban realms, cordon off there. And of course, there it's really dark and technocratic, and they control the food systems and there. But that is an interesting analogy. That's why I do like those movies. It's like hits home in many ways. But I think for now, the cities have fallen. It's time to, if you are in the cities, God bless you. If you really want to stick to it, hey, maybe you could help us there. Maybe you could help spread the awareness and take over the mental virus that's dominating the cities. But it makes sense too. Like, you could still get a pretty good deal. Like, there's still, believe it or not, the value of like homes in cities are really high still, because the debt system hasn't collapsed yet. Like, you could sell your 2-bedroom, 150 square foot, 1,500 square foot home for $500,000 in LA, or more, $1 million, depending where you are in LA, and go get a sizable chunk of acreage out in Idaho or Wisconsin or somewhere like that, and start a homestead. Or seeing that in our circles, a lot of people doing that, and join the agrarian movement. And that's really empowering. And so one other thing. So I recently did this week too, I did a wilderness survival workshop. It was an 8-hour wilderness survival workshop. And it was actually up at a conscious kind of off-grid community there. I wouldn't even say it's a community. It's just a spot where some individuals live that are completely off grid and pretty much self-sufficient. They've got beautiful gardens, goats. I mean, they're living the agrarian lifestyle to a T. And I was brought up something I wasn't aware of when we were sitting around eating after the workshops, which were amazing, and I highly recommend too. Having these skills, like I learned how to do a drill bow, and make fire. I learned how to build a basic shelter. A lot of stuff I already knew, but how to walk properly in the forest, do stuff like deer ears and owl eyes and fox feet and all this like cool stuff. But I learned about a series of books, and this is out of Russia. And I was curious if you've heard of the Ringing Cedars series by Anastasia. And I don't know if you're familiar with this, Bear, but this was brought to my attention, and it is really fascinating because it's like the Russian version of the agrarian movement, and it relates to kind of even like ascended masters teachings. It's kind of, I guess some people would say it's a little new agey, but the Ringing Cedars books are an international hit. And if anybody in the chat's familiar with these, I'm going to start reading them. And it's from a kind of celestial figure, you'll say, Anastasia, that was kind of appeared supposedly to this author. And the whole movement is based on an agrarian lifestyle and going, oh, no way. No way. Are really? Oh,
I just reached into my book portal.
Oh my gosh, Dr. Edith Ubuntu Chan, if you're watching or listening, he did it again. I bring up some random book series I just learned, and Dr. and Bear pulls it out of the portal. So you are familiar.
Oh, these are awesome. These are a great series.
So are you familiar then with the idea? So this was brought up. I haven't done any research in this. And I want to, this is like, oh, I got to read these. That Putin met with the author back after the fall of the communist Soviet Union, and basically was inspired to use this as a way to rebirth the state there, or the people there, and basically came up with the idea that they would give them people, they wanted to move out of the cities, a plot of land if they farmed it, with the idea that this would bring back sovereignty and bring back strength to Russia. Are you familiar
I
with
know
this?
Putin is on board with that. I wasn't aware that he was linking with the Anastasia books. I think if I'm not mistaken, I think there's 8 of these. Mm-hmm. And just a quick cliff notes, there's a business person that used to travel into remote Siberian villages in order to acquire certain things for his business, I guess, whatever he was selling. And he, over the years cultivated these relationships and finally came, in touch with certain people that lived very remote that had all of these abilities because they'd never been, civilized. One of them was Anastasia. And, it's just a wealth of information in the books where she, talks about how she grows things. And in fact, I got the first little tip that I've done ever since, whereas when I plant my own food seeds, I put them in my mouth and, impregnate the seeds with my DNA. And then when you grow the food, because of that, DNA within the membrane of the seed, it actually becomes food, not food, just food, but medicine for your particular body, with your DNA. And, I've done that ever since. And I learned that, through these books, but they're just fun books. They're in a way, sort of like the old Don Juan series, back in the 60s and the 70s, when those came out. Only I think these are a little bit more authentic. And, the costinated Don Juan thing was, we don't know if that was true or not, but either way, there's a lot of good truths in it. But the Anastasia books are amazing. And you also get into the whole, what the people in those locations understand is their cedars. They call them singing cedars. Mm-hmm. And they literally, these forests, you go in and they emit a sound. And, that's audible. So there's some pretty remarkable things that they talk about. And in fact, there's even some people, I can't authenticate this particular business, but I know there's some people out there that are selling little chunks of these singing cedars and claiming all these properties and everything. But the fact that these singing cedars are, unique forests on the planet and do have these intelligent, interactive, sort of attributes with the locals there, including audible, ringing sounds, singing sounds, It's pretty cool. Yeah, I'd recommend anybody reading those. They're great.
Wow, very good. I'm on it. I'm going to start reading it. I'm going to read it and read it to my kids.
Oh, they'd love it.
Yeah.
They're easy. They're real easy reading, really just kind of like fun reads.
Interesting. So I cannot believe I wasn't aware of this, but this is why it's important to go out in the world and find like-minded souls. I've really found like a new tribe up at this place I was at. And actually they really want to come see you and Deb and visit. There's like kids in their 30s that are up there. They're living off the land. One of them is very EMF sensitive, so she can't be around cities. So she's chosen to live there, and they're like the AV farms, right? Just totally off grid. But
Now that's the one doctor guy, right?
yeah, it's actually my
Yeah.
chiropractor now, who I
Yeah.
really appreciate. He's really helped me out. He's got a place, and in Telegram we've talked about it more. If people are interested to know more about this place, you can actually go and stay there. They've got like a tree house and a couple places you can stay as an Airbnb type situation. But I was really impressed with their gardens and what they're doing there, and the people are very genuine. And as a funny aside, while we were building our shelter, somehow the CV 1984 came up, and one of the gals there who's a caretaker is like just randomly says, "Well, we all know germ theory is a total hoax." And I was like, "Oh wow, I'm with my people here." So it's really just kind of wonderful to be randomly invited to this. I took the chance, and universe put me in a perfect place, more like-minded souls, and they were like so thrilled to meet people that are awake, because they literally feel like they've been pushed into the recesses of society because of their views on germs and EMF and modernity and where the world's going, and they're literally practicing the agrarian mindset like us to a T.
He's also very aware of the whole paper corporate game too.
Yeah.
I don't know him personally, but I just hear through the grapevine. So he's like one of those guys. I understand is gone down all the rabbit holes and figured out through his own experience what's real or not.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So since he's almost in the neighborhood here, I got to reach out to him, I guess. So so that's good. I'm glad you guys hooked up. And back to the whole gardening thing. They're doing it. He's a chiropractor who just took it upon himself to, learn things, learn a different way of, treating people, creating his own homestead, his own destination. Now they've got a whole thing happening. We're doing the same thing. And that's how it starts. That's what our whole talk is about today. Is individuals, whether you're in an urban setting or whether you live out in the boonies, it doesn't matter. I welcome anybody from urban places getting out and visiting us in the country, but I would strongly recommend those people to fix up their own backyard, because a lot of people really enjoy the urban lifestyle, and I have a lot of friends that are like that. So rather than saying, okay, I'm fleeing because they ruined my habitat or, all the things I used to love, it's just like, no, do what we're doing out here, only do it in your city setting. You've got like-minded friends, get together, start just doing little projects, get some clout, start communicating with other groups, start challenging the system, and, you kind of summarized it, the whole thing that they're, controlling us with their pieces of paper. And and some of the podcasts we've had are just delving into the whole paper game and correcting your status and all those sorts of things. And I went down all those avenues too, in years past. And I'm glad I did, because I learned a lot from it. But knowing what I know now, my attitude is, take your pieces of paper and shove them up your ass, because they're good for nothing else. And, I'm over it. And I think that's the times we live in. More and more people are just saying, I'm done. I tried to do the right thing. I tried to do it through legal channels. I played your game. It doesn't work. We're over it. and we realize you do not have good intentions, and the next phase of your agenda is going to be even more unpleasant. So let's just call it a day right now. So that's why no matter where we live, who we are, it's time to circle the wagons, do what we want to do, stop obeying, and create your own little piece of heaven right where you live in your own backyard, because we can all do it.
Beautiful. I think that's a great way to end the show today. And, there's you create your own reality. So wherever you are, and yeah, escapism isn't the way. I totally get that. Take responsibility for where you are right now, and people will look to you as an example. And I've seen that. There's a dude in Tempe, Arizona, I believe. Oh God, what's his name? I know him through permaculture circles, where he kind of was all about regreening the desert and how it used to be, and by creating swales just in the neighborhoods there. He broke the law actually at first by cutting the curbs, because you weren't allowed to cut the curbs, so that he would allow the rainwater that was just going down the road into the sewer system, or into the system, and just going out instead of going back into the ground. And then he would reroute that into little swales where they would plant indigenous plants there that thrive in that area. And he was able to turn his little suburban tract housing space that they moved into, that was just desperate, or just disparate and like depressing, into this really cool like desert oasis. And it was in like the middle of Tempe or something, in Arizona. And he has now inspired an entire community to do that. And so now you can just walk down, and they've got literally like food forests in their neighborhood, where there's tons of food in the desert. And he brought that awareness. It's just awareness and action and doing and being a good steward of the land, and inspiring people through what you do wherever you're at. So I love
Yeah,
that.
I had a friend in New Mexico who lived in a very arid place, and he wanted to, start farming. And he created this little device that collects the condensation, throughout the night, just the moisture in the air. And he had it shaped like in a little funnel, and every single plant in the ground had one of these on a stake right next to it. And it just literally watered it every night right out of the atmosphere. There's so many things that can be done with just thinking out of the box and just saying, this is what I want to do. That's the first thing is, okay, what do I want to accomplish? What are my intentions? And then the answers will come. The resources will come. That's all we've done, all these years. Everything, we've created a lot of things out there and accomplished quite a bit. And, from the get-go, we never had any business in the first place as far as the available resources and things at the time, but they all materialized because first off, we just said, these are our intentions. And that's exactly what we as a people in this country need to do right now, not accept any other, discussions or theories or anything. It's just like, okay, this is what we're going to do. How do we do it? And that's what's been attempted to be taken away from us, is us believing that we need other people to solve our problems for us.
Bingo. By the way, that person that I was just mentioning is Barre Lando, and the book is Rainwater Harvesting for Dry Lands and Beyond. And he's got a great little documentary, hour or half hour YouTube, if you just search him, where he shows everything he's done. So just a very
Cool.
inspiring character. Okay, guys. Thanks so much for joining us today. We hope you found this discussion to be illuminating and inspiring, and something you can share with your friends and family, so that we can continue this discussion around the dinner table, and start pushing these ideas out to those in the cities. And this is empowering stuff. So we're going to have a lot more conversations like this year. We will get more nitty gritty. I know one of the big topics people want to know is soil science and the ionization, and relating that to biodynamics, Barre, and how those kind of can work together, and really kind of pushing the envelope for innovation in growing. and pushing yield and volume up. And, I know that's a big thing that people are really into in the agrarian lifestyle, is improving their yields. And also, diving more into other techniques for growing in the winter. For like one of my big projects down the line, I know we want to do this at AV Gardens, is to do a regulated, thermo-heated regulated underground greenhouse. Also bringing in the idea of the grand solar minimum, and also manned manipulated weather, and how do we grow in these crazy times. What are some tactics and techniques, whether they be high tunnels, greenhouses, how do we build those? Intentional building too, building within the grid, within the node lines, or this relates to biogeometry and radiesthesia and all these things, and integrating all that technology too into farming. So it's way beyond horticulture now, which is exciting.
Yeah,
So
it's soil. What you're talking about is soil alchemy. It's not about organic farming where you dump nitrogen from organic sources or whatever, or even beyond biodynamics. It's about understanding that all of life is a product of electrical vectors. And when you assess your soil and tend to your soil, that is what you're focused on, which is the same thing we're focused on when we're in our alchemical labs creating spagyric formulations and things. It's about understanding how nature works, mimicking it, but in, with the technologies that we have available now, speeding up the process greatly, which is getting us to that true endpoint of humanity's mission on this, within this matrix, we'll say, which is the ability to precipitate on the instant all of your needs directly from the ethers. And if you understand deeply and appreciate enough the real principles of waveform mechanics and the things that we discuss, the ascended master teachings, it's all about, no, you should be able to precipitate directly from the atmosphere all of your needs. Alchemy, and what the ancient alchemists, understood, was to first take your cue from nature, then devise ways to speed up the process where the time lapse between, what you're creating and the manifestation gets shorter and shorter. And because you are an interactive element, your own consciousness within these processes, rather than relying on external means alone, then it brings you face to face with your own potential, which is going to be the only solution that is permanent for, putting us back in the driver's seat of being co-creators on this plane, rather than thinking that we are in some way victimized by all these forces working against us, or even nature itself, which is going to have our way, its way with us. And, just all the garbage that we've been taught. So, we need to get out of the biochemistry model of medicine and agriculture and go directly to the source. So it's going to be a good year, a lot of fun topics to talk about. And this was fun today. So thank you, Michael.
yes, thank you as always, Barre. Always illuminating. Always learn on these Alfacasts when we do these. So thanks so much. And I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. If you did, please give us a like, a follow, subscribe, share, all that good stuff, depending on wherever you're at. You can follow us on DLive is our preferred streaming platform. So please go to dlive.tv/Alfa Vedic and follow us there and join in the conversation. We do this live, so you can join in on the chat. We're on YouTube and Facebook, all those other places too, but who knows how long we'll be on those. So we're really focused on decentralized platforms, and we'll be aiming towards having everything on alfavedic.com in the future, but that is the place to go right now to find us. It's alfavedic.com for all the newbies listening. And you can join us on Telegram at t.me/alfavedic, and then on Discord at alfavedic.com/Discord. Last, you can join our co-op at patreon.com/Alfa Vedic. That too we will be getting off Patreon this year. I really want to make that happen. I know a lot of people can't stand that platform. They're pretty tyrannical when it comes to free thinkers. So we're just using that right now because we are bootstrapping this whole operation. And we will continue to grow and evolve and decentralize in every aspect that we can. Thank you guys. Thanks for all your support. 2021 is going to be one heck of a year. So thanks for joining us on the ride, and we'll see you next week. We've got some really fun guests coming for the month and these next few months. So we're going to be trying to bring some interesting new people out of the woodwork too. So you guys enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you next week. Cheers. And everybody out in D-Live world, thanks so much. You guys are awesome. Great conversations there. Thanks for all the new followers and subscribers on YouTube and D-Live. And we'll see you next week on a regularly scheduled time, Thursday at 10 a.m. Cheers.